everybody. It's the Real Estate Roundtable again. I'm Jeremy Pope, the Pope of Loans with PRMG Mortgage in Loveland. And we've got Brad back again. How's it going, Brad?
Going good. How are you?
I'm not too bad, not too bad.
Kind of liking the 70-degree weather we got going on.
Yes, this is nice.
Change of pace.
Absolutely. Spring might actually finally be here.
Okay.
How's the market looking to you? What are you seeing out there as an agent?
Starting to still see that, it's kind of a nice balance of market conditions. Not a bad time for sellers, not a bad time for buyers, kind of like what we talked about in the last podcast.
Yep.
I checked some of the figures and looking at, people have been worried about, the housing prices are going to come down, market crash, all that. And like what we've said on a couple of the podcasts, the information just doesn't bear that out.
Sure.
You still see the majority of houses that are selling for at or right around list price, and the days on the market is, for the not vast majority, but the majority is still 10 days or less, assuming that the house was priced correctly to begin with. But you have some outliers there that are longer than that. But generally, if the listing price is pretty close to being correct or market value, they're selling and going under contract in less than 10 days.
Yep. That's what I'm seeing as well on my side of things. And I've noticed an uptick in applications. More people are interested in buying homes, but you also still have the media still out there talking about bad time to buy, the market's gonna crash, and all this fear that they're trying to drum up. So we got to combat that, of course, and that's why we do these types of things, to re-educate the public on what's really going on. I think we've talked about it many times before. From a media standpoint, fear sells.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. They're just stoking the fire and I think creating a false narrative for sure.
Yeah,
So.
I would agree, and hopefully on a couple of, like I said, the past podcasts we did, that hopefully we've shown some information that will dispel some of those the fears.
Absolutely. So one of the things everybody always wants to talk about, of course, we talk about it every single time, interest rates. Where are we going from here? We going up? We going down? We going sideways? Where are we? And of course, it's a hot topic right now too. The Federal Reserve is having their 2-day meeting. Today is day 2. And we're looking forward to a press conference from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell at about 2 or 2:30 Eastern time today. That's when the analysts are sitting there. Did he pause awkwardly when he said something? I mean, they're dissecting every word, how he says it. Does he blink too many times? Is there some sweat coming off his head? And it gets, they try to use that information to see, where the Fed's head is at, because they always try to remain a little vague and kind of not give people too much info. But of course, they gotta answer some questions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see, and I wouldn't want to be sitting in that chair trying to make sure that every word came out just exactly like we planned it. So.
Exactly. So one of the things that I think is really important for people to understand, and of course I don't hear anybody else kind of talking about this stuff. Higher rates are a buyer's best friend. What'd you say, Jeremy?
Yeah. You would think on the surface that that's like exactly the opposite of how you would want it to, but there is some logic to that.
Yes, absolutely. It's something we talk about all the time. And of course, people are wondering, well, did you fall down and bump your head this morning? Have you been drinking this morning?
Right.
No. I'll show you what I mean and why I think that holds true, because it does sound crazy.
Yeah.
Higher rates are a buyer's best friend. What does that mean? Okay, so when we had lower rates in first half of 2022, what did that market look like? Do you remember that market, Brad?
Yeah, that market looked like you listed a price for something and it sold for something usually well above that.
Right.
And so it was definitely very good seller's market at the time.
Sure, sure. I remember talking to an agent who had a listing in Loveland at the time. It was sometime in early 2022. 70, it was in the 70s. I don't know the exact number. 70 some offers.
Okay. That'd be nice. That makes your job pretty easy when you're getting, well, it does, but it doesn't.
It does it, right. Lots of paperwork
Right,
to look
yes.
through.
Lots of stuff you gotta
lots
look
of hearts to break.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that's what that market looked like. And my fear is that if, well, let me back up a little bit. From that moment, right, people are going $50,000 over asking, waiving the inspections, just doing crazy things that you never thought you would see, really. And then rates started to go up. Well, that cooled down demand a lot, right? You had a lot of buyers that were listening to the media still. Oh, rates are high. I'm not going to buy. I'm going to wait, right? And then you've also had sellers that have a 2 or a 3 or maybe a 4% interest rate.
Yep.
They don't want to leave.
Right.
Because where are they going to go?
Yeah.
And they don't want they don't want to give up their low rate.
Sure.
They don't want to pay more. They don't want to get into the bidding wars. So I kind of get it. Everybody was at a stalemate, right? The buyers are sitting tight, sellers are sitting tight. What do we do? So now with these higher rates, the buyers that are in the market now, I think are smart, because as rates fall, which it ties into the Fed meeting. Inflation is dropping, which rates follow inflation. So when we see those lower rates, what do you think has to happen to home prices?
Well, yeah, you're going to steer right back, because what we've seen as rates have gone up, just like what you were saying, is the prices haven't, I wouldn't say fallen, but the $400,000 listing that a year and a half ago would have sold for $450 is now selling for right around $400, give or take a little bit. So yes, it's definitely made it a little bit more attractive for buyers, especially first-time home buyers who can't get into that bidding war and going $50,000 over asking.
Sure.
So I think it's helped in that respect, but also to answer your question, as interest rates would start to come down, now more buyers are starting to come into the market, as supply and demand, and I think you'll draw us up a nice graph here in a minute to show us how that's going to work. But you'll start to see the prices go back up, and we may get, maybe not into the craziness of 2021 and 2022, but you'll start to kind of shift more into that kind of a market.
Sure.
And like now, you actually do see where there are some seller concessions on some houses, which you weren't seeing at all before.
Correct.
So again, that's why this market now is kind of a nice middle ground. And if we see rates start to fall, especially if they fall fairly quickly, now I think you're going to see those prices start to jump.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been an advocate of buy while the prices are where they are, take your higher rate, and then look for refi opportunities in the future to get the lower rate, rather than I'm not going to buy, I'm going to wait for those lower rates, and then you're in the bidding war, you're pulling your hair out.
Yeah.
And getting your heart broken.
And we've shown a couple different charts that we've had on the other podcasts, where the difference between a $400,000 house a year and a half ago and what it is, I think the graph now is 6 months old, but bottom line is it shows you that at that price point, you're only $30, $50 more a month on your house payment. It's not quite as crazy bad as you think when you really sit down and analyze.
Sure. Yeah, let's look at a quick supply and demand chart. Here we go. Let's look at this graph. I think people learn visually, right? So quantity and price. So obviously this is a higher price. This is a lower price. This is more or less supply or demand, more supply and demand. So what you'll find is you've got a demand curve, right? You've got demand, and we're gonna call that D0, that's today. And then you got a supply curve that looks like this, and that's S and 0, okay? So this is the equilibrium price. Wherever they meet is what the price is. So let's draw a little dotted line, and we're over here, Okay. There's no scale on this. That really doesn't matter. But basically, this is today's market right here. Here's the equilibrium. Now, as demand increases, which means it goes up here, and if rates fall, I think demand probably doubles, triples, goes crazy.
Yeah.
So let's
Definitely
make
goes
that
up.
a big jump, right? Let's go out here and call that D1 for the future demand, okay? And then supply is also going to increase, I think, when we see lower rates as well. Because the sellers are more enticed to move or get rid of the low mortgage rate they probably have right now, and buy something else. With higher rates, they're reluctant to do so. So supply, I think, increases. I don't know if it doubles like demand does. I doubt it.
Yeah, I would.
So I might kind of make this one, this distance here about half of this. Okay, so there's your supply 1. Now, what happened? Now this is the new equilibrium price right here. And now we're here. What just happened on this graph? Lower rates, demand increased, supply also increased, but not at the same rate of demand, which is normal. And the price just went from here to here. So waiting for those lower rates is probably not what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like we talk about all the time.
Right. And I think even if you try to make a case for the supply tightening up a little bit, it's going to even make your point even more applicable is now your prices are probably going to go up even more. So either way, wherever that, in this case, unless supply really goes crazy, which it doesn't seem like it's going to do that.
Right.
If interest rates come down, demand goes up. Right now supply is definitely not keeping up with demand. And so,
No.
yeah, I think you're going to see prices go up.
Sure.
And you're going to be back into a market kind of like what we were saying that we saw 18, 24 months ago.
Right. The only way that that prices do not go up with lower rates is that you have demand and supply move at the same pace,
Right.
which, like you said, is something that you don't really see in the market. All that would happen here is this line, S1, is farther out here now, right?
Right.
And then where they're crossing is about the same as it is
Right.
now.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And like I said, it's kind of ridiculous what you hear on TV and what everybody's talking about.
Yeah, they definitely like to blow things out of proportion, and like you said, the news media loves the clickbait talk. And again, and maybe on one of the next podcasts we can talk a little bit about or show some examples of, hey, here's why. And we've had a couple charts where it shows why this slowdown, I wouldn't even say slowdown in the housing market, but just a reduction in the increase in prices is nothing like 2008.
Correct.
And again, so hopefully that can assuage some people of their fears of trying to enter
Right.
into the market. And
A
become
lot of people, that's still fresh in their mind. That was a major debacle, right?
Sure.
And so those emotions are kind of brought out from
It
the
scars
depths.
you.
Yes,
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yes.
a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the Fed meeting, right? That's in the news right now. 2-day meeting, and today is day 2, like we talked about. People ask, well, Jeremy, I want to lock in a mortgage rate ahead of the Fed increase, and that's really not how it works. All of that is kind of baked into the cake already, right? So if everybody knows that rates are going to be increased 25 basis points, which is what they did,
Yeah.
which is what everyone expected, rates did not go up yesterday. They actually fell.
Yeah.
Which is very counterintuitive, right? That's weird. The Federal Reserve raised rates yesterday, but interest rates fell yesterday.
Yeah.
Strange.
Well, and I think, like you're saying, it's baked into the cake, so that I think a lot of people had built that in, and what ended up happening is what they expected it to happen. So that kind of gave some people almost like a sense of comfort, or at least it wasn't out to lunch from what they were expecting.
Sure.
So then you see, okay, everything's kind of in line
Happening
with what
how
we're-
it's supposed to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if the Fed would have, everybody was expecting 25 basis point increase, and they would have done 50, we would have seen rates spike yesterday, right? Because they did something unexpected.
Exactly.
So it's interesting because the reason we got some relief in rates yesterday, rates dropped yesterday on a day that the Fed raised them, right? How did that happen? Well, they're finally, the Federal Reserve, or Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, is finally starting to kind of acknowledge some things about, hey, we may be done increasing. I don't think he said that before.
Right.
We may be
Right,
done.
right. Yep.
So the analysts are loving that. The market likes that.
Yeah.
The market doesn't want higher rates, right? They want lower rates. So he's starting to acknowledge that. He's talking about inflation dropping, which we know rates will follow suit. He's talking about seeing light at the end of the tunnel. So the market loves all that of what he's saying. And how he's saying it, and then we saw what happens.
Yeah.
Rates drop on a day they went up.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Counterintuitive, but
Very, very, very. Other thing in the news that I saw, and I'm not sure if you know this, Brad. FHA loans are actually becoming more desirable, or more. They just look better than they used to.
yeah, yeah,
The disparity, has always been pretty large between a conventional loan and an FHA loan for most people. And FHA made some changes. I think they're trying to attract more business, because at the end of the day, you've got Fannie Mae, you've got Freddie Mac, you've got USDA, you've got VA, and you've got FHA, right?
Yeah.
These are all pretty much government-controlled entities at this point. So nobody wants to see Fannie Mae have 90% of the market share, because then they become too big, and if something goes wrong there, now we've got bad things, right?
Yeah.
So they're always trying to adjust the programs to attract business away from another entity, because that entity is becoming too powerful, so to speak, right? An example that happened, not recently, but it was a change, just to kind of drive home the point, would be, Freddie Mac is the conventional loan entity that not many people talk about. I think more people know who Fannie Mae is rather than Freddie Mac. So there was a point in time when Freddie came out and said, you know what, people that have student loans and don't have a payment reporting on their credit reports, which is a result of COVID and all the forbearance stuff, or deferment, then you, as a lender, you can use 0.5% of the balance, and that's the payment, right? And Fannie Mae was at 1%. So Freddie Mac, what they did is they just made it easier to qualify with them than Fannie Mae did.
Yeah.
So they're trying to steal some market share from Fannie Mae, and Fannie Mae likes that. We don't want all the risk. Here, you take some, right? So FHA is kind of doing the same thing, I feel like. Maybe Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac is kind of has too much market share right now. So what they did is pretty cool. They lowered the amount of monthly mortgage insurance. To make it real simple for everybody to kind of understand, $200,000 FHA loan was $141 a month in mortgage insurance, and now that number is $91.
So you're
The savings of $50.
$50, yeah.
Yeah, not bad. $600 a year. So, we're starting this. Like I said, the disparity between the two is shrinking. So it makes sense for clients to kind of reconsider FHA loans. They're not bad.
Yeah.
Based on.
Well, I think that's helpful, because a lot of times, especially if you've got 2 or 3 offers on a house and some are conventional and one of them is an FHA loan, that one generally is going to be looked on less favorably. So hopefully maybe that will change
Sure.
some of that perception.
Sure, I hope so too. Because they're not a bad loan, and they make sense for some people, and some people just have to have them,
Right.
with a lower credit score, higher debt to income kind of stuff. So.
Gotcha.
That's all I have.
Yeah,
I don't-
works for me. No, it's whatever. Sweet 16 weekend, so there's some good basketball on, and I was impressed with your ability to graph in public. So
Thank you.
Nice job.
I still can't fly fighter jets, but I guess I can draw graphs.
Baby steps.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll be talking to you soon.
All right, have a great one.